Shadowverse Worlds Beyond, the third card set, will be revealed very soon on August 21st, and I've been chosen to be one of the official co-streamers, specifically for the English co-stream, so you can check that out on this very channel. But I wanted to do a little bit of speculation on what we might get. And to be clear, I don't know anything yet. We had this schedule from earlier, before the game came out, and it says here, 3rd late August, 3rd card set, and it has a silhouette, a peculiar silhouette, and we can learn quite a lot about what might be coming because of this reveal. Because it's very clear that that silhouette is Mjerrabaine from the Omen of the 10, which was a classic Shadowverse set. In fact, there were two, Omen of the 10 and Omen of Storms, and I want to see if we can glean a little bit of knowledge about what we might be getting in the third set based on how they designed the omens in the original game. So, Omen of the 10, they even had this entire like character page on the official website that tells you the lore. TLDR, when worlds need to evolve to become better, they send these 10 guys who are like, you know, higher beings that put the world through trials in order to improve the world. So here, this is Mjerrabaine, of course, this is the guy in the silhouette, as I said. Now, Mjerrabaine is interesting because he's the first Omen, and he's the Omen of the One. So if we take a look at Mjerrabaine in the original game, his thing is that he gives you a benefit if there are no duplicate cards in your deck, which is very cool. And you'll find that while we talk about these, each of these characters pretty much has an archetype built around them. And if that carries over to Shadowverse Worlds Beyond, it'll really expand the breadth of like archetypes we get, you know, rather than everything just being generic support. That being said, I am a little worried, we'll talk about that later, if they are going to adapt them faithfully. So Mjerrabaine Omen of One gives you basically a crest whenever, like if you have no duplicates except for Mjerrabaine, and then it makes it so that usually it does something good if you have like one follower on the board at a certain like play point cost or something like that. So pretty cool. If we are forced to build a Highlander, that would be really sick. Now, the reason why I say I'm worried about them adapting it faithfully is because we have seen cases of cards from Shadowverse Classic being adapted to Worlds Beyond, and their entire aura has just been gone and they're reduced to generic support. Case in point, Limaga Untamed Wild. So Limaga in the new game, she's just a control tool, right? But Limaga in the old game, she had, once again, an entire archetype built around her where you would summon these tokens called Greenwood Guardians, and the more you summon, you eventually get the Limaga for free. Pretty cool. Archetypal. An entire deck in and of herself, but in Worlds Beyond, she's just some lad. And that is what I'm worried about regarding if they're going to adapt the omens, right? Let's move on, though. Portal Craft, we have the Omen of Destruction, Lishenna. So she might be really good puppet support because her deal is that when things get destroyed, these tokens get cheaper, right? And then you can play these out, Destruction in white, Destruction in black, and they end up healing and doing damage. The new form, Lishenna Melodious Destruction, puts these depending on like what's been destroyed. And then, again, they get cheaper if things get destroyed. So you can imagine that'd be really good with puppets, right? Just spending your puppets to reduce the cost of the tokens, which then heal you and deal damage over the course of the game. Also, interestingly, the new form of Lishenna has Evolve, which lets her reanimate, which is typically a mechanic that's limited to Shadowcraft, or I guess Abysscraft in Worlds Beyond's case. It'll be interesting to see if they port that over too. Now, I am worried because, again, Karula is a very flavorful legendary from the original game, where the entire point was to float play points, like leave unspent play points at the end of your turn, which then procs a bunch of effects. Very flavorful, very unique. And then in Worlds Beyond, they turned him into just a guy that summons an artifact. It's pretty sad. So I really hope that they adapt it in a more, interesting way, I should say. Next up, this is an interesting one to talk about because, of course, in the original Shadowverse, Bloodcraft and Shadowcraft were separate classes. So it's different here in that Rulenye and Valnareik will be given to Abyss. That's the same as it was in Shadowverse Evolved, to be fair, so there is a precedent for it, but it's still a bit interesting to think about. Rulenye, his thing was that he made spells more expensive for the enemy leader, but that's like something that Phylene does in the new game, right? Phylene has a very similar effect to the original Rulenye, so I kind of doubt that that's gonna be the one that they port over. If I had to guess, they'd probably port over the new form of Rulenye. Well, new, it's from an old classic game. But yeah, this guy summons himself a bunch of times, and also he has this effect where, you know, you can summon a bunch of him. It gets your rally up, it gets your shadows up, and then you necromancy to get him back. And then he has this effect where if you have 10 Rulenyes that were destroyed, he like does damage to the enemy leader. So just a guy who keeps coming back and back and back. Very, very emblematic for the themes of Abysscraft. You know, like a zombie that keeps rising again and again. So that's probably what I would expect to be ported over. Valnareik, on the other hand, and I will skip to Valnareik because it's an Abyss card, right? Valnareik is actually number 7, so she's quite a while down there. And her thing, now this is a fun one, is that she procs off of Wrath. So Wrath is the mechanic in Shadowverse Classic, which procs if you've damaged yourself on your own turn 7 times or more. And, you know, in Shadowverse Worlds Beyond, we got plenty of cards in Abysscraft that damage yourself for seemingly no end. Beryl, right? Damages yourself. Of course, Excella damages yourself as well. Rage of Serpents damages yourself. But we don't have anything that capitalizes on you damaging yourself like we did in Classic with Vengeance and with Wrath. So could the advent of Valnareik in Worlds Beyond be the return of Wrath or one of these self-ping mechanics that were so emblematic of Bloodcraft? Because one of the big criticisms of Abysscraft is that it just feels way more like Shadow than it feels like Blood. And if you want to introduce a little bit more of that Bloodcraft flavor, then having a card like Valnareik that procs of Wrath or Vengeance might be a fun one to introduce in this third set. Also, since we're getting into the third set, it's about time to introduce a little bit more mechanical complexity. Now, we talked about Shadowverse Evolve earlier, and they don't have Wrath, they don't have Vengeance, but what they do have is something called Sanguine. So that might also be a potential mechanic they port over. Sanguine basically means if you've taken damage during your turn, then Sanguine is active. Kind of similar to Ilya, I guess, which procs when, you know, you took damage on your previous turn. But it's more like, for example, you'd be able to play Rage of Serpents in the new game, and then it would damage you, and then for that turn now, Sanguine's active, and you can play something that activates with Sanguine. Something like that. Might also be an interesting one to port over in terms of Abysscraft. Next up, of course, we have Marwynn. Marwynn in the classic game is very much a control haven card. So the idea is that he is very much dealing with the board as well as, you know, being able to accelerate your game plan. It's pretty interesting because they're both pretty different. So the new form of Marwynn just destroys a bunch of guys and then gives a banish tool into your hand if you destroyed a lot of guys. But the old form of Marwynn is more mechanically interesting, I think. It basically ramps both players, accelerating the game by 1 turn. Very interesting. I'm not sure if they want to give ramp outside of the Dragoncraft class. Could be good for Wardhaven, for example. Who knows? Next up, we have Galmieux, my personal favorite, to nobody's surprise. The entire thing about Galmieux and her archetype is self-ping on your own followers in order to proc effects. So pretty interesting mechanically. Basically, you deal damage, to everything, including your own stuff, and then when your stuff gets damaged, like for example, if Galmieux gets damaged, she evolves, and then if she gets damaged again, you deal 3 damage to the random enemy follower and the enemy leader. Very similar to the new form as well, Galmieux Ardent Disdain. She puts a Fangs of Ardent Destruction into your hand, and then it deals damage to Galmieux, but it also gives her Storm and gives her attack. Hopefully we get a cool adaptation of Galmieux. Next up is Izudia. He's actually a control forest craft tool, which is a archetype that we're not really seeing in Worlds Beyond quite yet. So Izudia, the original, is like a really expensive guy that changes the enemy's maximum defense. So but he's really slow. It's kind of like a worse version of Astaroth's Reckoning, kind of, but it's main deckable. And then this one is Izudia Unkilling Annihilation. He's a little bit more interesting in that he gives you this annihilating onslaught, which reduces the attack of enemy followers. So it lets you kind of lock the enemy board by just reducing their attack to 0, right? Which is pretty neat. A way for Forest to control the board without outright killing things. Another cool thing is that in Worlds Beyond, we do see some hints at a control forest archetype being built towards, with cards like Deepwood Fairy Beast, that's just like a super heavy, big healing tool. Maybe even can support a Rose Queen deck, right? It helps you control into a Rose Queen OTK, or something like that. Will it be better than Roach? Probably not, but who knows, right? Could be cool to see. Next up, we have Octris, who is historically a very good card in all versions of Shadowverse, both Evolve and in the classic game. She's pretty cool in that she lets you steal things from the enemy. So here, you steal last words from the enemy. You also get these loot cards that help you out. And like if Sword gets healing, that might shore up their only weakness, which is kind of scary. We also have Hollow Usurpation, the second form of Octris, who again steals effects from an enemy follower, and then also can help you get those gilded cards that like are very utility. But then also she makes Remnant of Hollowness, which is just like damage. So pretty scary stuff. If Sword gets Octris and it does what it does in Classic, it might shore up, like I said, their only weakness, and that's pretty terrifying. Next up, we got Runecraft with Raio. Raio is a spell boost card typically. So like here, the original guy just spell boosts your deck 9 times. Pretty boring, but like spell boosting cards in deck is pretty cool, especially since in Shadowverse Worlds Beyond, all spell boost is persistent between hand and deck now. Raio Truthful Elimination, a little bit more interesting. He changes the cost of your cards in your deck to 1. That might be a little crazy for this stage in the game of Shadowverse. Also kind of stealing Fenny's bit. Like if you think about it, it's like Raio doing that just makes it kind of a better Fenny, so that's kind of sad. But also cool is that he gets Ursat's Elimination, which can also like change an enemy follower to 1/1. So similar to Izudia, I guess. He's the one that's maybe the least flavorful in terms of the omens. It's just like boosting what spell boost already has, but could be cool. I'm wary of giving spell boost more support though. And then finally we have Gilnelise, last but certainly not least. She is super neat. Her original form was a little heavy, but generally what she's used for, giving you more healing. She always has Drain, for example, which lets you just like, if she's introduced, she could be a generic healing tool for any class. The original form also buffs your board, which could be cool for, you know, ambush or intimidate based strategies. But then the really crazy form was her second form, Ravenous Craving, which, you know, you can evolve her and then she becomes a 6/2 with Drain. So 2 play point with an evolve to heal 6 is kind of crazy. And then also, if you reach turn 10, you get this Ravenous Sweetness, which gives you a little bit of inevitability. I don't think we're going to get this though. This kind of card design, let's leave it in Shadowverse Classic. In Worlds Beyond, I don't think we're going to get this for a while. This kind of card design is crazy. But yeah, just a neutral healing tool might be interesting as well if we're going to get Gilnelise in the new game. All right, that's my thoughts on Omens and what we might be getting in Set 3. And once again, check out the live stream that we're doing on August 21st. We're the official English co-stream, so I'm super thankful for that. And we'll see if any of my predictions come true. Other than that, thank you for watching. Go check out the video on screen right now where I check out Midrange Abysscraft, which has been really winning a lot of tournaments lately.